When a girl's emotions are ignored, something inside her often breaks quietly, like a soft place in the heart that no one notices until it begins to etch in every silence. But the truth is, this being unseen by people does not mean being unseen by Allah. Your tears are not wasted, your whispers are not lost, and your hurt is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that your heart is still alive, still capable of feeling, still connected to the one who created emotions as pathways back to him. Healing begins the moment she stops asking the wrong people to understand what they were never meant to hold, and turns instead to the one who knows her without explanation. When her emotions are dismissed, she learns that people's reactions are not a measure of her worth. They are reflections of their limitations. She learns that healing is not loud, not always visible, not always validated by those around her. Sometimes it is just her, alone with Allah, rebuilding piece by piece, learning boundaries, learning self-respect, learning that she does not need to shrink her feelings to keep others comfortable. Healing is remembering that her heart was never meant to be placed in the hands of those who don't know how to honor it. When she rises from what tried to diminish her, she becomes stronger, softer, wiser. A woman whose worth is defined not by how others treated her, but by how Allah raised her after the hurt. Your emotions are seen by Allah even when ignored by people. Sometimes the deepest wounds are not the ones caused by harsh words, but by silence. The silence of someone who chooses not to notice your pain, who looks away when your heart is trembling, who treats your emotions like they are too heavy, too dramatic, too inconvenient. That silence can feel like a rejection, a dismissal of your worth, as though what you feel is somehow too much or not enough to matter. But Allah, the one who created your heart, never overlooks a single tear. Even the emotions you bury, the ones you're too afraid to express, the ones you feel ashamed of. He has already counted them, already embraced them, already written them with wisdom and mercy. When people ignore you, it is not a reflection of who you are, it is a reflection of who they are and what they're capable of offering. Your worth does not shrink because someone else's compassion is small. Your feelings do not lose their value because someone lacks the maturity or empathy to honor them. There are moments when you feel like you are speaking but not being heard, crying but not being seen, breaking but not being held seen, and in those moments it is easy to believe you are alone. But you are not alone, not for a single heartbeat. Allah is closer to you than the people who failed you. He listens to the words you cannot speak, the cries you hold inside, the swelling heaviness that lives between your ribs. Every breath you take while hurting is witnessed by Him. Every night you lie awake trying to understand why someone dismissed your emotions is surrounded by His knowledge, His mercy, His nearness. Sometimes Allah allows certain people to ignore you so you can stop depending on them for what only He can give: validation, gentleness, understanding, presence. When you stop waiting for them to see you, you begin to see yourself. You begin to realize that their inability to value your feelings is not a sign that your emotions are excessive. It is a sign that their emotional capacity is limited. You start to understand that not everyone has the heart to hold yours, and that's okay. Your heart was never meant to be handled by everyone. It was meant to be handled with care, with sincerity, with purity, and no one does that better than Allah. When people overlook you, Allah is teaching you where to place your emotional trust. He is guiding you to detach from those who make you feel invisible and turn toward the one who calls you significant. He reminds you through every wound that He is Al-Basir, the all-seeing, that He is Ash-Shahid, the witness to every emotion you feel. He does not dismiss your pain. He does not judge you for feeling deeply. He does not get tired of your tears. And He never tells you that you are too emotional. Instead, He honors the sincerity within your emotions because He knows they are part of the soul He created. And when you finally realize that Allah sees you perfectly, sees what you lost, sees what you wish for, sees what hurts, sees what you hide, you no longer chase being seen by people. You no longer beg for understanding from hearts that were never capable of giving it. You stop shrinking yourself, stop apologizing for your feelings, stop questioning the depth of your own sensitivity. Instead, you start embracing it as a gift. A heart that feels deeply is not a weakness. It is a sign of life, compassion, and spiritual depth. If Allah created you with such a heart, then there is wisdom in it. Healing begins the moment you understand that being ignored by people does not mean being forgotten by Allah. It means you are being redirected to a love that is constant, a presence that is unwavering, a listener who never turns away. It is in this divine witnessing that your heart finds safety again. It is where the H begins to soften, where you learn that every emotion you carry is known, counted, and held by the one who never ignores you for even a second. People's dismissal does not define your worth. Your Creator does. It is one of the greatest sources of pain, giving someone access to your heart, your sincerity, your vulnerability, only to have them act as if it means. When someone dismisses your feelings, your presence, or your voice, a part of you begins to wonder whether you matter. You start questioning yourself, your value, your place in people's lives, the way you feel, the way you exist. But the truth is this, the way people treat you is never a measure of your worth. Human hearts are inconsistent. They love one day and grow distant the next. They praise you when it suits them and overlook you when they're distracted. They see you through the lens of their own wounds, limitations, and emotional capacity. So when someone dismisses you, it is a reflection of their inability to recognize depth, not a reflection of your lack of it. You were created by Allah with intention, purpose, value, and dignity. Your worth was written long before any human entered your life, long before any opinion attempted to define you, long before any relationship rose or fell. Allah is the one who shaped you, honored you, breathed into you from His Spirit, and declared your existence meaningful. The value He gave you is permanent. It doesn't decrease because someone failed to appreciate you. People can only see you from the outside, but Allah sees what is inside. The sincerity in your heart, the beauty of your character, the patience you hold, the wounds you carry quietly, the effort you make even when no one notices. How could the judgment of people compare to the judgment of the one who knows every hidden detail of your soul? Sometimes you experience dismissal so you can detach your identity from people's opinions. Allah allows certain hearts to reject you so you stop measuring yourself through them. If someone cannot recognize your worth, that does not mean you are unworthy. It means you are standing in a place where your value is too big for them to comprehend. You are asking for understanding from a heart that cannot even understand itself. You are expecting emotional presence from someone who has never learned to be emotionally present for their own soul. How can their dismissal define you? Your worth does not rise when people like you, and it does not fall when people ignore you. Your worth is anchored in something eternal, unchanging, divine. Allah honored you as His creation. He raised your status with faith, with patience, with resilience, with sincerity, qualities that no human being has the power to take away from you. The world may try to measure you by superficial standards, beauty, popularity, obedience to their expectations, convenience, but Allah measures you by your taqwa, your purity of intention, your efforts, the struggles you endure, souls you effort, the honesty in your heart, and His measure is the only one that truly matters. There are moments when someone's dismissal cuts deeply because you expected them to care, to listen, to understand. But even this pain carries a hidden mercy. Allah uses these moments to shift your dependence away from people and toward Him. When someone's rejection shakes, It reminds you that you must never place your self-worth in human hands. If someone's opinion can break you, then your sense of value was tied to the wrong place. But when your worth is tied to your Creator, no one can make you feel insignificant again. Not their silence, not their distance, not their coldness. Your Creator defines your worth through His mercy, His love, His knowledge of you. He knows when you hold your tongue to keep peace. He knows when you cry quietly at night. He knows when you forgive even though the wound still hurts. He knows when you try your best with a heart that is tired. The people who dismiss you may never see these moments, but Allah sees every one of them. If He sees you, truly sees you, then what does it matter who chooses not to? So let them dismiss you. Let them overlook you. Let them misunderstand you if they must. Their opinion does not shape your destiny. Their acknowledgement does not increase your value. Your Creator has already written your worth, and it is far higher than anything a human being could measure. You were never meant to be defined by people who cannot even define themselves. You were meant to be defined by the one who created you, the one who loves you, the one who never dismisses a heart that turns toward Him. Healing begins when you stop seeking validation from the wrong hearts. So much of our pain comes not from what happened to us, but from where we placed our expectations. We often hand our hearts to people who were never meant to shape them, seeking approval from those who cannot even understand themselves. We wait for words that never come, for reassurance from people who are emotionally unavailable, for affection from those who fear closeness. And in this who fear closeness, in this longing to matter to someone whose heart is not capable of meeting ours, we slowly break. We confuse their silence with our inadequacy, their inconsistency with our lack, their hesitation with our unworthiness. But none of these things are true. The pain only grows because we are trying to harvest love from barren soil, expecting nourishment from a place that was never planted for us. Healing begins the moment you understand that not every heart is meant to hold yours. You may be gentle, sincere, understanding, and deep, but that does not mean everyone has the capacity to receive you. Some people will dismiss your emotions not because they are wrong, but because they have never learned to process their own. Some will ignore your needs because they have never felt safe enough to acknowledge theirs. Some will invalidate your feelings because vulnerability terrifies them, and others simply cannot offer what you are seeking, no matter how much you wish they could. When you cling to these hearts, waiting for validation, you end up shrinking yourself, softening your voice, burying your feelings, apologizing for needing connection, pretending you don't hurt just to maintain a relationship that is already slipping through your fingers. This is not love. This is self-abandonment. There comes a point when your soul whispers that it's tired. Tired of trying to be enough for people who cannot see you. Tired of explaining yourself to those who don't want to understand. Tired of opening your heart to those who only know how to take without giving. That whisper is the beginning of healing. It is the moment Allah gently redirects your heart away from the wrong people and toward Him. It is the moment you realize that validation from people is fragile and fleeting, but validation from Allah is constant and pure. When you stop seeking worthiness from those who belittle your feelings, you create space to recognize your worth as it was given by your Creator. Steady, dignified, honored. Healing does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop begging for love. It means you stop tying your self-worth to whether someone chooses to stay, listen, or care. It means you stop living in emotional poverty just because you are afraid of letting go. Healing is the process of understanding that your value does not decrease when someone fails to appreciate it. You do not become less deserving of love because the wrong person could not give it. You do not become less meaningful because someone failed to recognize your depth. You simply outgrow a space that was never meant to hold someone of your soul's size. When you detach from the wrong hearts, you begin to see yourself clearly again. You start noticing your strength, your compassion, your resilience, your sincerity, the qualities that were overshadowed while you were busy chasing acknowledgement from those who could not see them. You realize that love should not hurt this much, nor should acceptance feel like a test you constantly fail. You learn that you deserve emotional safety, honesty, genuineness, reciprocity. And most importantly, you learn that the ache you feel is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that your heart knows it was created for something deeper. When you stop seeking validation from the wrong hearts, your chest begins to feel lighter. Not because the pain magically disappears, but because you are no longer carrying the burden of someone else's emotional limitations. You start walking toward people and places that honor your existence without requiring you to beg for it. You begin turning your heart toward Allah, who never ignores your feelings, never grows tired of your prayers, and never asks you to lessen your sensitivity just to be worthy of love. That is where real healing begins. Not in being validated by others, but in recognizing that the one who created your heart never needed anyone else to approve of it. Protecting your heart with boundaries is an act of self-respect and faith. There comes a point in life when you realize that not everyone who enters your world is meant to have access to the deepest parts of you. Some come with sincerity, some with care, some with pure intentions. But others arrive with wounds they never healed, expectations they never communicated, or emotional gaps they expect you to fill. And if you are not careful, you begin giving your heart to people who do not know how to hold it, lowering your guard for those who never earned that closeness, stretching yourself thin for those who would never do the same in return. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep love. They are doors meant to allow the right kind of love in. They are the gentle, firm lines that protect your emotional and spiritual well-being. They remind you that your heart is a sacred trust from Allah, not something to be thrown into situations that dishonor its worth. People sometimes misunderstand boundaries, assuming they are signs of selfishness or distance. But boundaries are the opposite. They are signs of wisdom. They are the markers that separate what nourishes your heart from what harms it. Without boundaries, you absorb pain that was never meant for you. You accept responsibilities that are not yours to carry. You tolerate disrespect disguised as love. You make excuses for actions that continually wound your soul. With boundary soul, you learn to pause before giving, to think before opening, to discern before trusting. You understand that emotional access is a privilege, not a default right. You learn that saying no is not cruelty, it is protection. And protection of your heart is part of protecting the trust Allah has placed in you. He did not create your heart for it to be drained, used, or broken by carelessness. He created it to be guarded, honored, preserved, and given to those who value it. Setting boundaries is also a form of spiritual clarity. It is saying, I refuse to place my emotional peace in the hands of people who do not value it. I refuse to give my energy to relationships that pull me away from Allah. I refuse to let my soul be shaped by chaos. When you establish boundaries, you choose stability over turmoil, sincerity over inconsistency, depth over superficiality. You also begin to recognize the patterns that drain you, conversations that leave you, relationships that leave you questioning yourself, environments that weaken your sense of self. Boundaries help you step back from these places and protect the heart that Allah has entrusted you with. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with people you love deeply. You fear that distancing yourself or refusing certain behaviors will cause them to leave. But true love is not threatened by healthy boundaries, it is strengthened by them. A relationship that crumbles because you protected your emotional well-being was never stable to begin with. A connection that requires you to abandon yourself is not a connection, it is captivity. Boundaries reveal who values your heart and who values only what you offer them. They help you separate those who want to walk with you from those who only want to lean on you until you break. Boundaries are also a form of faith because they reflect trust in Allah's sustenance, not people's approval. When you see, this is not okay for my emotional or spiritual health, you are trusting that Allah will not reduce your blessings just because you refused something harmful. You are trusting that He will replace what you release, protect what you honor, and strengthen what you guard. Sometimes Allah allows hurtful situations to show you where your boundaries should have been. The pain is not punishment, it is guidance. It teaches you to protect your heart the next time, to choose peace over pleasing, to choose sincerity over sacrifice that leads to pain. Protecting your heart with boundaries is not about shutting the world out. It is about letting the right things in. Love that doesn't suffocate, kindness that doesn't manipulate, connection that doesn't drain, faith that doesn't waver. It is about honoring the heart Allah gave you, respecting it enough to shield it from what harms it, and reserving it for what grows it. Your boundaries are a statement that your heart matters, your peace matters, your faith matters, and you will no longer allow anything or anyone to diminish them. True healing happens in your quiet moments of sincerity with Allah. It's not always found in grand transformations, loud breakthroughs, or dramatic changes. Sometimes it happens in the smallest, softest moments, those moments when the world around you is sullen, and the only sound you hear is the whisper of your own heart returning to the one who created it. Healing unfolds when you sit alone in the stillness of your room with a heart that feels heavier than your own body, and you whisper to Allah what you have never been able to say to anyone else. It happens when your tears fall not out of weakness, but out of relief, because for the first time, you are being honest with Him, with yourself, with your pain. In those private conversations, you realize that Allah has been listening long before you began speaking, that He understood your wounds even before you knew how to name them. There is a sacredness in those quiet moments. These are the moments when you are not pretending, not performing, not trying to be strong for anyone. You are just yourself, unfiltered, unguarded, undone. And still, Allah receives you with compassion. He does not turn away because you are overwhelmed. He does not dismiss your emotions because they are messy. He does not tell you to get over it or move on. Instead, He draws you near, invites you to pour out everything you've been holding inside, and promises that not a single tear will be wasted. Healing is not always about solutions. Sometimes it's about finally having a place where you don't have to hide your brokenness. Sometimes it's about feeling safe enough to fall apart. True healing does not require an audience. It doesn't need validance. It doesn't need someone to say, I understand. Healing becomes real when you stop waiting for people to care and realize that Allah has always cared more than anyone ever could. When you turn to Him in sincerity, something inside you softens. The burden feels lighter, not because the problem disappears, but because you finally placed it in the hands of the one who can carry it. You begin to understand that even when people fail you, Allah never does. Even when people invalidate your emotions, Allah honors them. Even when you feel invisible to the world, you are fully seen by whom? There are wounds inside you that words can't reach, that therapy cannot fully heal, that friends cannot always understand. These wounds are the ones that require divine healing, the kind that comes from being vulnerable with Allah. In those points, you begin to unravel the knots in your heart, confess the fears that have been suffocating you, and release the disappointments you've carried for too long. You admit your loneliness, your exhaustion, your confusion, your guilt, your longing. And in that admission lies the beginning of healing. Because healing begins with truth, and no truth is more powerful than the truth spoken to Allah in the privacy of your soul. Healing also occurs when you reflect, when you ask Allah to show you the wisdom behind your pain, when you slowly start to see that what hurt you was also guiding you. You realize that the heartbreak taught you to rely on Him, the rejection taught you to trust Him, the loss taught you to appreciate Him, and the silence taught you to listen to Him. Your quiet moments with Allah help you see that the pain was not random. It was purification. It was realignment. It was the soul returning to its source after being stretched too far in the wrong direction. Pain becomes a doorway, not a dead end. You may think healing requires strength, but sometimes it requires surrender. It requires letting go of the idea that you can fix everything alone. It requires admitting that you need Allah more than you need closure from people, more than you need answers, more than you need anything else. And when you surrender, when you finally allow your heart to rest in His mercy, healing begins to flow gently, without force, without rush, without pressure. It unfolds in its own time, like dawn replacing the night. True healing is quiet, intimate, unseen by the world, but fully known by Allah. It is the kind of healing that makes you breathe easier, sleep deeper, and walk louder. It is the healing that strengthens your faith, deepens your resilience, and softens your heart without making it fragile. In those moments of sincerity with Allah, you discover that He is the one who heals the broken, comforts the weary, and lifts the hearts that have fallen too many times. And you realize that no matter how deep the wound, a moment with Him can reach it. That is where true healing lies, not in the world, but in your quiet, honest moments with the one who never erred. Rising after hurt transforms you into a stronger, wiser version of yourself. There is a unique kind of strength that is born only through pain. Strength you cannot learn from comfort, ease, or perfectly smooth chapters of life. When you have been hurt, especially by someone you trusted, something inside you breaks open. At first, it feels like loss, like failure, like a collapse you may never recover from. But slowly, beneath the surface, something else begins to grow. Your heart starts to rebuild itself, not in the way it was before, but in a way that carries the wisdom of every wound you survived. The pain you once feared becomes the very soil in which resilience takes root. The tears you shed become water for new clarity, new boundaries, new understanding. Wounds, when surrendered to Allah, do not weaken you, they refine you. They strip away illusion, remove people who were never meant to stay, and open your eyes to truths you needed in order to rise. Rising after hurt is not immediate. It is a gradual, almost invisible process. You wake up some days feeling broken, other days feeling numb, and sometimes feeling like you are beginning to breathe again. And in those small moments of breathing, when the heaviness begins to lift even a little, you glimpse a new version of yourself waiting to emerge. You start to see that what broke you also taught you. It taught you who you are when everything else is taken away. It taught you what kind of love you deserve, what kind of intentions matter, what kind of relationships nourish you. You begin to understand your boundaries, your needs, your worth. You learn to walk away from what drains you, to protect your heart without hardening it, to give without losing yourself. Without the hurt, you would never have discovered the strength that was always inside you. Pain has a way of polishing the heart. It scrapes away naivety and replaces it with insight. It softens your compassion for others because you know now what it feels like to be broken. It deepens your gratitude because you have learned that nothing, peace, kindness, love, clarity, is small. It teaches you humility because pain reminds you of your dependence on Allah, not on people. And it awakens your courage because rising after falling requires a bravery you never knew you possessed. This courage becomes part of you. It shapes your decisions, your voice, your choices. It helps you say no where you once said eyes, helps you walk away when you once stayed, helps you choose yourself when you once abandoned yourself for others. Rising after hurt also shows you the beauty of Allah's timing. You begin to see that not every loss was a punishment, some losses were actually protection. Some heartbreaks were redirection. Some departures were answers to prayers you didn't even know how to make. You realize that Allah allowed certain pain not to break you, but to save you from people, from illusions, from versions of yourself that needed to be shed. He replaced them with truth, with a heart that is more aligned with Him. Every step you take away from what hurt you is a step toward a better version of yourself. One that is clearer, stronger, more grounded in faith. And perhaps the most powerful transformation of all is this: rising after hurt teaches you to trust yourself again. Pain often makes you doubt your intuition, your judgment, your ability to see people clearly. But healing restores that confidence. You start recognizing the signs you ignored before. You listen when your heart feels uneasy. You trust your instincts when something doesn't align with your peace. This self-trust is a gift born directly from your wounds. It is part of the new strength you carry. Rising after hurt does not mean you forget what happened. It means you are no longer controlled by it. You carry the memory, but not the weight. You carry the lesson, not the pain. You walk forward with a heart that has been bruised, but not broken. Humbled, but not defeated. Softened, but not shattered. And in this new version of yourself, you find a strength that feels unshakable. Not because you never fall, but because now you know that every time you fall, Allah will raise you again. That is the transformation that hurt brings. That is the wisdom pain teaches. That is the beauty of rising. You become someone deeper, kinder, wiser, stronger, and more in tune with the one who heals us.